Hello there, this is James S. Crofty, JS1978, once again discussing an issue raised by my long-term subscriber Rexy500, specifically the entire issue of social responsibility in art, the question of both how much and also what kind of responsibility, if any at all, artists and the people who create entertainment have, both for the social or individual consequences related to their artwork and also towards society as a whole. Before I continue though, I just want to make it clear that because the distinction between pure art, if there is such a thing, and making entertainment for profit is incidental in this particular video, I will be using the term artist in this single instance to mean anything from a starving writer such as myself to the multi-billion-dollar corporations which finance summer blockbusters such as Guardians of the Galaxy and games like the Call of Duty and GTA franchises. And bearing that in mind then, leaving the debate over what qualifies as art for another time and place, I would argue that the responsibility of an artist is to continuously push the boundaries of both what they create and why they create it, to never feel satisfied or content, to always ask, is this good enough? And more importantly, what else can I do, and what is there that I have yet to fully explore? In the case of individual artists, of course, for whom the profit motive is secondary, if not completely non-existent, the meaning of what I just said is entirely obvious. However, it also applies equally to vast corporations which produce entertainment for the sole purpose of turning a profit. Because although people scream that they're only doing it to make a profit, somehow insisting that turning a profit and being inclusive, progressive, or original are naturally incompatible, that once your profits exceed the six-figure mark, then you are automatically a slave to the bland, cliched and formulaic demands of the straight white teenage boys who give you money. Any progress is still progress, and as much as we may criticise movies and video games specifically for not being as original, as progressive, or as inclusive as we would like them to be, there has been some limited progress during the course of the last 20 years, because although straight white teenage boys and adult men trapped in the mindset of teenage boys always seem to throw a bitch fit whenever a concession is made to anyone other than themselves, screaming that the world is ending because the politically correct, culturally Marxist, feminazi, affirmative action, gay agenda, thought police want to ban and censor everything, the industries themselves know that the rest of humanity, which surprisingly enough does actually include women and girls, are a growth market. That having saturated the 17 to 35-year-old straight white male demographic, they can only genuinely increase their profits by opening their doors and ultimately by being more inclusive, progressive and original. Just as a brief side note, in fact, the fear that women, gays and ethnic minorities are taking away our movies and our video games does seem to be yet another example of the desperate struggle to maintain the social norm, which I explained in the video links down as the underbar. However, focusing on the issue of social criticism and the backlash against it, which I mentioned a moment ago, I would argue that just as an artist's responsibility is always to push the boundaries, it is also the responsibility of society as a whole to always demand that they push the boundaries, to never be satisfied or content, and to always ask, what else could you have done? What is there that you have yet to explore? Because while the close-minded and the paranoid always seem to assume that any form of criticism is a personal attack, made solely with the express intention of banning or censoring anything which we don't like, especially when it comes to video games, as I've already implied, criticism is the means by which society demands more, motivating artists to strive to accomplish more themselves. After all, art is a reflection not only of our society, but of the very core of humanity itself, not merely how we are in real life, but our hopes, fears, dreams, prejudices, values and ideals. And as well as being influenced by society, art also influences society in turn. So then, when we understand this symbiotic relationship, we realise that criticism, discussion and debate are not merely beneficial, but also vital to the flourishing of both. Because remember, a civilization is ultimately defined by its art, meaning that on top of being a reflection of who we are and what we believe, what we demand from art is also a reflection of what we demand of ourselves. In a nutshell then, if our entertainment is bland, formulaic and cliched, created for the sole purpose of keeping the mindless sheep happy for a few more hours, and all fulfilling the power fantasies of 17-year-old boys, then the only thing worse than what it says about our society is the fact that we are telling artists that this is what our society has become, that therefore this is what they must reflect. In some cases, actually punishing artists for daring to push the boundaries at all. Indeed, in my ever so humble opinion, the people who are doing the most to destroy movies and video games in particular are those people on the internet and elsewhere who seek to crush and silence any social criticism, discussion or debate by screaming, "It's only a movie," or "It's only a game," declaring that it was made to be enjoyed and to make money, not to change the world, and it doesn't matter what it portrays or how we interpret its message, because once again, it's only a game. However, no, by yelling this in the ironic attempt to defend their beloved medium, supposedly against censorship, but in reality simply against anything which reminds them that what they enjoy often has a controversial social message which may have important real-world consequences, because they merely want to have fun and honestly don't care about the wider social impact or influence of what they enjoy, what they are actually doing when they declare that it's only a movie or it's only a game is telling the rest of the world that their beloved medium is worthless, both culturally, artistically, figuratively and literally, because if it has no meaning or relevance of any kind, if it is genuinely nothing but entertainment for brain-dead zombie mouth-breathers, then not only are they perpetuating the very worst stereotypes of gamers and the people who are fans of summer blockbusters, but there's also no incentive for the producers of such entertainment to strive to provide originality, inclusiveness, or progress of any kind, and moreover, there is honestly no reason to complain or even care if it ever gets censored or banned. Finally though, addressing the entire issue of whether or not an artist is in any way responsible for harm in real life which is somehow a result of or related to their work, to kill two birds with one stone, I will use the example of my new book Beauty is Pain, available now on Amazon, and as always the relevant links are also down as the underbar, because as I explained in the author's introduction in that book, my stated goal in writing and publishing it was to promote empathy and compassion amongst its readers, to encourage people to care, because, to quote from that introduction directly, if we can truly share the pain of a fictional character, no matter who they are or what they have done, then maybe we can also choose to stop rationalising the pain of other people here in the real world. Of course, in order to achieve this goal, my book explores issues such as rape, suicide, drug addiction and self-harm in graphic and often disturbing detail, and to this day I am genuinely afraid that the people who read it may feel triggered or otherwise be driven towards depression, anxiety, self-harm or suicide themselves. As a matter of fact, when the book was first published, Teresa and I made up a somewhat tasteless joke to express our anxiety through humour, paraphrasing a scene from the sitcom Red Dwarf saying, "You sold it to 5 people and they all committed suicide. I wouldn't mind, but one of them was sent the wrong book by mistake. He only wanted a copy of Beauty in Paint." However, although I constantly struggle with whether or not to recommend the book to my friends, or anyone else for that matter, knowing that I would feel unbearably guilty if anything bad ever did happen in real life as a result of them reading that book, if something bad did ever happen, then I personally would be no more responsible, culpable, or liable for the consequences than the makers of Orange is the New Black are responsible for the fact that seeing the advert for that TV programme always triggers me and makes me feel suicidal as well. After all, as I said before, art is a reflection of society, a creative and fictional interpretation of what already exists in the real world in some way, shape, form or fashion, meaning that ultimately holding art responsible for actions and consequences in the real world is like smashing a mirror because you don't like what you see, and that therefore the issue is not artists' social responsibility, but rather society's responsibility to itself.